And welcome to part 4 of our Whispers of the Old Gods card review. Today we're going to be looking at a few more cards that have been released recently. The first card we're going to take a look at is going to be the Cult Apothecary. It is 5 mana, 4/4. Its battle cry is for each enemy minion restores 2 health to your hero. As an example, basically if your opponent has say 4 to 5 minions on the opposite side of the field, when you play this card, that's going to restore 10 health to your hero. If there is certain decks that you're playing against, whether it be a Secret Paladin that plays, that muster for battle, or the new card that's coming out called Stand Against Darkness, it's going to summon those 5/1/1s. You can use those cards to your advantage by playing the Cult Apothecary to get that extra heal that you need towards the mid game. You can also use it against an opponent that's playing, say, Zulok, and they play their Implosion, and they have 4/1/1 imps that spawn off of that Implosion. That's going to get you 8 health if you play this card, because that gives you 4 minions that you're going to get 2 health each from, that's going to be restored back to your health. This can be a really good card to be used to try and boost your health if you're getting overwhelmed with enemies on the opposite side of the field, to try and top deck an AoE that could help clear the field while getting healed because you played the Cult of the Apothecary card. The next card we're going to take a look at is going to be the Ancient Harbinger. It is a 6 mana 4/6. The text reads, at the start of your turn, put a 10 cost minion from your deck into your hand. Since we've got several of the old gods that are going to be part of this upcoming expansion, it can help you get those old god cards into your hand sooner, unless you've not already drawn them. But if you play this card, it's guaranteed that you will get that 10 cost minion from your deck put into your hand. As we saw in my previous videos, Cthulhu is a 10/10. Enzoth is also a 10 mana cost card. So if you play those cards in some of the decks that are going to be made once the expansion comes out, this card would guarantee that you would be able to get that into your hand a little bit earlier if you weren't able to draw into it by this point. The next card we are going to take a look at is going to be the Nightmare Dragon. The Nightmare Dragon is a 6 mana 2/8. At the start of your turn, double this minion's attack. This card could have a fun combo attached to it. There was one that I was looking at that might be quite interesting. If you can get it onto the field and keep it on the field for a couple turns. And that is going to be... It's going to be the Crazed Alchemist card. Basically what the Crazed Alchemist card does is it swaps the attack and health of a minion. So you play this on turn 6. It's a 2/8. It doubles its attack to 4 the next turn. You could play your Crazed Alchemist and you could switch it to where it's got 8 attack and 4 health and attack with it and try and kill a big taunt that your opponent may have on the opposite side of the field, or you can do it for some extra face damage. This card is actually a lot cheaper than trying to play a Sea Giant if you don't have enough minions out on the field to make the cost lower. If you don't have enough cards in your hand to play Mountain Giant, which is 12 mana and it's an 8/8. There is also the Molten Giant, but that one gets cheaper as you take more damage anyway, so that one's not really going to be affected so much. but with this being a 6 mana 2/8, you can get it out earlier because it only costs 6 mana. And then the following turn, it would now be a 4/8. And then if you play the Crazed Alchemist to swap the health and the attack of the Nightmare Dragon, it will now be an 8/4. So this is one of the combos I was looking at that could possibly be played to get the higher attack out of the Nightmare Dragon. There will probably be other combos that people are going to try, but we'll have to see what combos they're going to come up with. The next card we are going to look at is going to be the Shikrum Cultist. This is going to be another card that is going to play with our Cthulhu Legendary. In my first video, we went over some of the minion cards that had been released earlier on, and there have been the Beckoner of Evil, which adds +2/+2 to your Cthulhu. There is the Twilight Elder. At the end of your turn, it gives +1/+1 to your Cthulhu. There's also the Cthulhu Chosen, which was one of the neutral minions that's got Divine Shield, and it also adds +2/+2 to your Cthulhu. And this card, the Secrum Cultist, is yet another card that can be used to boost your Cthulhu. It is a 6 mana 7/6 battle cry. Give your Cthulhu +2/+2. So we've seen several minions that have come out so far that are going to be centered around the Cthulhu Legendary. All of them are different mana costs, and most of them, except for the Twilight Elder, which gives the +1/+1 at the end of your turn, all the other cards that we've seen that have boosted Cthulhu, it boosts him by +2/+2. So there's probably going to be a lot of decks that are going to be centered around Cthulhu, because there are so many cards that are coming out that are able to boost your Cthulhu by 2 health and 2 attack, with different values as far as mana cost, and each one of them being +2/+2. A lot of people are probably going to be able to build their Cthulhu up to a decent health and attack and take advantage of that battle cry where it deals its attack to every minion that's on the field and the opponent's face. It's basically like I had said when we were talking about Cthulhu in my last video, that we compared it to an Avenging Wrath, because Avenging Wrath does 8 points split amongst all enemy minions. And with Cthulhu, his battle cry is his attack is split like the Avenging Wrath is between all enemies on the field, and a possibility to hit the opponent's face with some of that damage too. So it could possibly turn out to be a late game finisher. You can use it to do a lot of damage to try and clear the board, to where you would be able to have the board advantage. So this is another card that we're going to be adding to that list of Cthulhu cards. The next one we're going to be looking at is going to be a Mage spell card. It is the Kabbalist Tome. It is a 5 mana cost spell card that mages are going to be getting. It adds 3 random mage spells to your hand. Those do not count cards that are already in your deck if you're playing a mage that are spell cards. This is kind of going to be like playing a spell slinger, where you get a random spell dealt to yourself and your opponent, but in this case you're going to be getting 3 random mage spells added to your hand. So if you don't have say a Flame Strike in your deck, it could add that to your hand. It could add a Blizzard, Fireball, Frostbolt. As we know, mages have a plethora of spells that they have access to. I'm not sure if this is going to count secrets, because I think secrets are counted as spell cards. I think they are. Let's take a look here. I would think that secrets are going to be considered spell cards, but I'm not sure if it's going to interact with this card that way. It may only give us access to um, only the spells that they have in their hand. Um, with decks that play around the Flame Waker card, the Flame Waker is from BRM, so you can still use it when Standard comes out, but you play this card, you get 3 random spells added to your hand. If they're cheap spells like Arcane Missiles, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Frost Nova, those are just to name a few of the cheaper cost spells that mages have. And you play this card also counts as a spell, so it's also going to trigger your Flame Waker. And that'll be able, if you get a lot of cheap spells in your hand, that'll be able to do the damage from the spell, plus after you cast a spell, the Flame Waker deals 2 damage randomly split amongst all enemies. So you play the Frostbolt, the Arcane Missiles, and say the Frost Nova to keep everything from attacking you the next turn. Each one of those spells is going to trigger your Flame Waker, which is going to be able to do even more damage to your opponent's side of the field. And I've seen current decks being played now where a lot of people are playing the Flame Waker and they are using cheaper spells and advantage to try and clear the board quickly and still apply pressure to your opponent's board. So with this Cabalist Tome, it's the 5 mana, it's a spell card, it's going to trigger your Flame Waker, you're going to get 3 more random spells added to your hand, so that's going to give 3 more spells that you can use to interact with your Flame Waker. We're going to see if it's possibly going to interact with secrets. There's a chance that you could get an Ice Block or an Ice Barrier or even an Effigy that you could get from this, but it does not specify that if we are going to get secret cards, because I'm not sure if they consider secrets as spell cards per se, but we're just going to have to wait and see what Blizzard decides to do as far as the interaction for that card. The next card we're going to take a look at is going to be a Druid spell card. It is called the Mark of Yasharaj, and it is a 2 mana spell for Druids. It gives a minion +2/+2, and if it's a beast card, you draw a card as well. So basically what I want to compare this to is Druids have a spell card called Mark of the Wild, and it is also a 2 mana cost card. It gives a minion taunt and +2/+2. With Mark of Yasharaj, it gives a minion +2/+2, and if it's a beast card, you draw a card. So Mark of the Wild gives it +2/+2. Mark of Yasharaj gives it +2/+2. But with Mark of the Wild, you give a minion taunt and +2/+2. Whereas when we play Mark of Yasharaj, we're giving it +2/+2. And if we're giving that boost to a beast card, we're also getting a card draw out of it. They're both 2 mana cost cards, so I could see people possibly playing a lower cost beast card and trying to protect it with a higher mana cost taunt, and then we can try and add Mark of the Wild, which will give it +2/+2 and taunt. And then also during that same turn, we could play Mark of Yasharaj and give that minion +2/+2. And if we play it on a beast card, then we're also getting a card draw out of that. So for 4 mana that we would play that turn to try and buff the card that we are protecting with taunts. To make it a taunt, we're going to give it +4/+4, and if we're playing it on a beast card, we're also getting a card draw out of it. So we're increasing a minion that we have on our field by +4/+4 and making it a taunt. Which means if the taunt that we were using to protect it dies, we also have this other taunt that we have just now made to help protect our health and still apply that pressure on the opponent to try and apply that pressure so they have something else to deal with while we can try and come up with our plan for our next turn and how we want to implicate it next turn. The next card we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Shadow Ward Horror. It is another priest card. It's a spell card that priests are going to be getting. It is a 4 mana cost priest spell card. It destroys all minions with 2 or less attack. So it's kind of like Shadow Word Pain, which priests already have. Shadow Word Pain destroys a minion with 3 or less attack, and it costs 2 mana. Whereas the Shadow Word Horror card is 4 mana, and it basically will destroy all minions with 2 or less attack. So, in the case of playing against the example I used before, if you're playing against a Secret Paladin that plays Muster for Battle in Wild mode, or you have a Paladin that's going to be playing Stand Against Darkness, which spawns 5 1/1 Silverhand recruits. You play this card, it's going to kill all the Silverhand recruits, and if they have any minions that have 2 or less attacks, they're all gone. So that's going to clear the entire side of the field. If you play it against the other example I used, if you're playing against a Zoolock that is going to be playing the Implosion spell card and does damage to one of your minions, happens to do 4 damage to that minion and spawns 4 1/1 imps, and you don't have any other AoE spells to try and deal with this new problem that's come up. You have 4 1/1 imps that have just spawned. You've probably only got 1 or 2 minions, which are probably really low on health, but you want to try and keep them around for another round. You're going to play your Shadow Word Horror, and it's going to destroy all those minions because they've got 2 or less attack. It's also comparable to, I would compare it also to Shadow Nova. Shadow Nova deals 2 damage to all enemies and restores 2 health to all friendly characters. It's a little bit different of an AoE spell, but the concept for it is probably going to be about the same. It's not going to do the 2 damage to all enemies, and it's not going to restore health to your side. But the idea behind it, it's going to be a priest AoE spell, because it's going to destroy all minions with 2 or less attack for the 4 mana. So it's like having another AoE spell that priests have in their deck. Because one of the few that they have is people will do the Arcanine, Soul Priest, and Circle of Healing, which basically does 4 damage to all minions on the field. We've got our Holy Nova here, which deals 2 damage to all enemies and restores 2 health to our side of the field. We've also got the Excavated Evil card. It deals 3 damage to all minions. Let me see, that's 1, 2... The Arcanine, Soul Priest, Circle of Healing, that's 3 AoEs. But yeah, priests really don't have much for AoE spells. There's also Light Bomb, which is usually used for more late game. It deals damage to each minion equal to its attack, so that's kind of considered another priest AoE spell. But I think what they're trying to do is a lot of um, priests probably wish they had that little bit of extra AoE early on in the game, and Shadow Word Horror is going to be one of those cards that can be used early on before you get to the mid or late game, and you're going to need the other cards like the Light Bomb and the Holy Nova and the Arcanine Soul Priest Circle of Healing combo that a lot of people are still using. But as we all know, mages have a lot of AoE spells already. You know, they have their Arcane Explosion, they have Flame Strike, they have Blizzard, and then they've got one other AoE spell. I think that they just recently got. Oh, Frost Nova. That's the other one. But priests don't have too many AoE spells, so this is going to be another one that's going to be added to the early game board clear. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are probably going to put it in there for early board clear or before the board gets too overwhelming for them, to try and clear the board of those lower cost, lower attack minions. We're just going to have to wait and see how the card is going to be implemented into priest decks in the future. The next card we're going to be taking a look at is going to be a Paladin minion card. It is the Steward of Darkshire. It is a 3 mana, 3/3. Whenever you summon a 1 health minion, give it Divine Shield. Now, since I've been speaking a lot of 1/1 cards, if this card is played in wild mode, you can couple it with Stand Against Darkness and Muster for Battle, because all those Silverhand recruits that are summoned from that spell, they're all 1/1 Silverhand recruits. And this card says whenever you summon a 1 health minion, give it Divine Shield. So I'm pretty sure that it's going to interact with the spell card. Since it spawns the 1/1s, this has not been confirmed and it has not been denied. So if it does work, that's going to actually give us a way to hang on to our Silverhand recruits for another turn. We can wait for a lot of the buff cards that Paladins have. Blessing of Might, Blessing of Kings, and if you happen to have it in your deck, you could use Blessed Champion, which would double the attack. There's also another card that a lot of people are wondering if this card is actually going to couple with, and that card is going to be the Twilight Drake. And Paladins don't typically run Twilight Drake, but since it is a 4 mana for 1, when it's initially summoned, it's actually at 1 health. So if you have, say, 4 cards in your hand, the battle cry for the Twilight Drake is it gains 1 health for each card in your hand. So if you have 4 cards in your hand, you play this card, it's going to add 4 health to your Twilight Drake. But since when you initially summoned it, with it being a 4/1, our Steward of Darkshire is actually going to work with the Twilight Drake. Because basically what's going to happen is you play the Twilight Drake, it drops on the field as a 4/1. It's going to get the Divine Shield from the Steward of Darkshire because it's a 1 health minion, so it's going to get the Divine Shield. Then after the Divine Shield is applied, then it's going to get the buff from the amount of cards that you had in your hand. So this is probably going to be a little trick that a lot of people are going to try and play out. they're probably going to try and get as many cards in their hand as what they can and play a few of the cheaper ones just to try and keep board presence. So I can see a lot of people having, like nine cards like handlocks usually do to get their worthwhile out of the Twilight Drake, because when they do that, then it's a 4/9. Um, but Paladins may start playing this because with the Steward of Darkshire, um, if it does end up being a 4/9, it originally starts out as a 4/1, so it's going to get the Divine Shield, and then it's going to get bumped up to that 4/9. So that's going to give you a high health minion with Divine Shield. Um, we're just going to have to see if people are going to implement the Twilight Drake into Paladin decks in the near future when this expansion comes out. So we're just going to have to wait and see. The next card we are going to take a look at is going to be our old friend King Mukla. King Mukla was one of the legendaries that was released when Classic came out. King Mukla was a 3-mana 5/5, and he basically gave your opponent 2 bananas. What the bananas did is you could use them as spell cards, and they would apply +1/+1 to any minion of your choice. He was 3 mana, 5/5, and gave your opponent these 2 bananas. Well, the old gods got a hold of King Mukla, and King Mukla is now going to be a 6 mana 5/5, whereas our old King Mukla was 3 mana and was 5/5. The one good thing that I'm noticing about the corrupted King Mukla is instead of giving these 2 bananas to your opponent and allowing them to buff their minions, he's actually going to give you these two bananas now, and they're going to be added to your hand, so you can actually use them to either buff Mukla. You're playing on, say, turn 10, you play King Mukla for 6 mana, and it adds these 2 bananas to your hand, which each banana costs 1 mana. So you can basically make your King Mukla a 7/7 by the time you end your turn. Whereas with our old King Mukla, he was 3 mana, 5/5, and we gave those bananas to our opponent, so we had no way to buff our King Mukla. Now, if our old King Mukla had the new Mukla's battle cry, then he would have been a 7/7 King Mukla for 3 mana, which would have been pretty awesome if they had done it that way um, when he had first come out in Classic. But with the new King Mukla, since we're getting the bananas, as I said before, we can boost our King Mukla to give him more board presence for the following turn. If we make him a 7/7 and we've got a bigger taunt that we're having to deal with our opponent, this could help us clear that big taunt off the field that we're trying to deal with. We don't have the proper spells. So he could probably be a good pressure applier to your opponent if he's played on the right turn and you're able to use those bananas in the same turn. The last card we're going to take a look at is going to be the third old god that they have shown us so far for the Whispers of the Old God card expansion. We've seen Cthulhu, 10 mana, with an awesome battle cry effect. We've seen Enzoth the Corruptor, which has the ability to bring back Death Rattle minions that you have summoned earlier on in the game that you would currently be playing. And this is the third Old God. He is also 10 mana, but he is a 10 mana, 10/10, um, and his card text reads, at the end of your turn, put a minion from your deck into the battlefield. Basically what that means is if you're running low on cards, haven't drawn those really heavy minions that some people have in their decks, um, say you're playing Secret Paladin, you've only got 4 or 5 cards in your hand, you have your Yasharaj in your hand, it's a 10 mana turn, you play Yasharaj, if he survives for the next turn and doesn't die to Big Game Hunter, which Big Game Hunter can only be played in Wild. So Big Game Hunter is not probably going to be played in Standard. There's also a possibility that they are talking about possibly nerfing Big Game Hunter because a lot of people, there's probably been numerous games that you've played yourself where you think that you're going to apply all that pressure to the board. I'm going to play Dr. Boom. Dr. Boom's a 7/7. He spawns the 2 Boom bots. You know, I'm going to be able to finish this game early because I've got Dr. Boom. And then the next turn, what does your opponent do? They either polymorph your Dr. Boom if you're playing a mage, or if you're playing any other class, they're probably going to play Big Game Hunter and they're going to kill your Dr. Boom. That's the main card that I've seen Big Game Hunter used for a lot lately, because Dr. Boom has been implemented in so many decks as of late. But if they do change Big Game Hunter, Yasharaj may be out of Big Game Hunter area of being able to kill it, because currently Big Game Hunter is, if it has attack 7 or above, it destroys that card. Cthulhu is kind of under it, because when you play it, it actually starts out as a 6/6. Our other Old God, Enzoth, he's a 10 mana 5/7, so he's um, way under Big Game Hunter to be able to kill Enzoth. So if Big Game Hunter stays where he's at and they don't nerf him, then Yasharaj is going to be one of those bigger targets that's probably going to be cleared as soon as he's played. A lot of people, knowing this card's going to be coming out, if they see somebody played, say, Dr. Boom, they might let Dr. Boom stay on the field for that turn, and they may wait till turn 10 and see if somebody's going to play Yasharaj, and they'll use that Big Game Hunter to kill Yasharaj, because if he stays on the board too long, at the end of each of our turns, it's going to put a minion from our deck into the battlefield. But as I was saying before, if this is put on the field and you're playing a paladin and you've got 3 or 4 cards left in your hand and one of those happens to be Tyrion and you don't have a taunt on the field right now, there's a chance that at the end of your turn, Yasharaj could draw that Tyrion. You'd have that taunt that you need. The plus is even if you do lose Tyrion, you still get that 5/3 Ashbringer from it. In handlocks run those Molten Giants. A lot of them run the Mountain Giants. Those are The mountain giants usually you have to have almost a full hand to make them really cheap. The molten giants you usually typically have to take a lot of face damage in order to be able to summon them. In order to make them free, you have to be at 10 health or lower in order for them to be summoned, because they're 20 mana. But if Yasharaj is on the field and you're playing the handlock, there's a chance that Yasharaj could draw you a mountain giant or molten giant for no mana. I mean, there are ways that you can summon your molten giants for no mana. You have to be at 10 health in order to summon them, so you're pretty much almost dead. With the mountain giants, they're 12 mana, so you have to have at least seven or eight cards to make them cheap enough to where it would actually be able to be played and be able to play other cards when those cards come out in the field. Um, that is going to be the last card we are going to be looking at for this video. Um, this is probably not going to be the last video, so I'm going to go ahead and say um, we will see you again when we take a look at part 5, and we'll see what cards that's going to hold, and we'll see what they're going to release here soon. And we'll see you guys next time.